The Silent Vanguard. Commander Alara Novik massaged her temples as she stared at the tactical display. The bridge of the USDF Dauntless hummed with quiet tension, every crew member hyper-focused on their stations. For 6 hours, they'd been monitoring the hegemony fleet that had taken position just beyond the Arcturus boundary, 14 warships arranged in their signature spearhead formation. "Still no movement, Commander," reported Lieutenant Javier Ortiz, his fingers dancing over the sensor array. "They're just sitting there." Alara nodded, her steel-gray eyes never leaving the display. At 42, she had spent over half her life in space, the last 8 years commanding patrol vessels along the contested border regions. The fine lines around her eyes and the single streak of silver cutting through her otherwise auburn hair were testaments to the stress of those years. "They're waiting for something," she murmured. "The hegemony doesn't commit a battle group this size without purpose." The Dauntless was a capable vessel, a Defender-class patrol cruiser with respectable armaments and state-of-the-art sensors, but it stood no chance against a hegemony battle group. Their mission was observation only, monitor, report, and avoid engagement at all costs. "Commander," called Communications Officer Terrence Way, "priority transmission coming in from USDF Command. Admiral Halloran, encrypted channel." Alara straightened her uniform jacket. "I'll take it in the ready room, Ortiz, you have the bridge." In the privacy of her ready room, Alara activated the secure comm system. The stern face of Admiral Verna Halloran materialized on screen, her dark skin contrasting sharply with her white uniform and silver hair. "Commander Novik," the Admiral began without preamble, "we're tracking an unidentified vessel approaching your sector. Classification unknown, but it's moving fast, faster than anything in our registry." Alara frowned. "Hegemony reinforcements." "Negative, the vessel isn't broadcasting any known identification codes, hegemony, United Systems, or otherwise. More concerning is that it's running without conventional drive signatures. Our tracking stations are having difficulty maintaining a lock." "A stealth vessel?" Alara asked, her mind racing through the possibilities. "Unknown, but I'm rerouting the Hyperion and Athena to your position. Until they arrive, maintain your position but increase your distance from the hegemony fleet. If this unknown vessel is hostile, I don't want the Dauntless caught in a crossfire." "Understood, Admiral. Estimated arrival time for reinforcements." 4 hours minimum. Be careful, Alara. Something doesn't feel right about this." The transmission ended, leaving Alara with a growing sense of unease. Admiral Halloran wasn't one for hunches or premonitions. If she was concerned, there was good reason. Back on the bridge, Alara quickly issued new orders. "Helm, increase our distance from the hegemony fleet. Maintain observation range but be prepared for immediate withdrawal. Tactical passive sensors only. I don't want us lighting up anyone's screens." And Ortiz, reconfigure the long-range sensors to scan for anomalous movement patterns. As the crew executed her commands, Alara studied the tactical display. The 14 hegemony warships remained in formation, their massive hulls bristling with weapon systems that had devastated human colonies across 3 sectors. The largest, a dreadnought-class vessel named Eternal Dominion, was nearly 2 kilometers long, a floating fortress capable of reducing planets to cinders. For 3 decades, the United Systems and the Zevan hegemony had engaged in a brutal war of attrition. The technologically superior hegemony had the advantage in direct confrontations, but humanity's resourcefulness and determination had prevented total defeat. It was a grinding, bloody stalemate with no end in sight. "Until today, perhaps." Commander Ortiz called, his voice tight with tension. "I'm detecting something unusual." Alara moved quickly to his station. "Define unusual, Lieutenant." He hesitated, adjusting his instruments. "It's like a shadow on the sensors. Not fully materialized, but definitely there. Moving directly toward the hegemony formation at," he paused, rechecking his readings, "impossible speeds. Whatever this is, it's not using conventional propulsion." "On screen," Alara ordered. The main view screen shifted, showing a magnified view of open space. At first, there was nothing, just the distant stars and the looming shapes of the hegemony vessels. Then, a shimmer like heat rising from desert sands, and the faintest outline of something sleek and dangerous materialized. "What in the void?" whispered Terrence. The vessel, if it could be called that, was unlike anything Alara had ever seen. Approximately 300 meters in length, its hull was a deep obsidian that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. Strange, intricate patterns flowed across its surface like liquid geometry, constantly shifting and realigning. There was no visible propulsion system, no external weapons arrays, nothing that indicated how it moved or functioned. Hegemony vessels are changing formation, reported Tactical Officer Naomi Russo. They're moving to intercept. The bridge fell silent as they watched the hegemony ships break their spearhead formation, reorienting to surround the intruder. It was a standard hegemony tactic, overwhelming force from multiple vectors, leaving no avenue of escape. They're powering up weapon systems, Russo continued, her voice steady despite the tension. Primary and secondary arrays on all vessels. The mysterious ship continued its approach, unperturbed by the wall of destruction aligning against it. No evasive maneuvers, no apparent defensive preparations, it simply glided forward as if unaware of the danger. "This is suicide," Ortiz muttered. "No single ship can withstand that kind of firepower." Alara wasn't so certain. Something about the vessel's confidence gave her pause. Either its captain was monumentally arrogant or knew something the rest of them didn't. "The Eternal Dominion is hailing the unknown vessel," reported Wei. "Standard hegemony ultimatum: surrender or be destroyed." Moments ticked by with no response from the mysterious ship. "Hegemony vessels have locked weapons," Russo announced. "Energy signatures indicate imminent firing sequence." Alara leaned forward, hands gripping the console edge. "Record everything," she ordered. "Full sensor sweep, visual documentation, all frequencies." The space between the vessels suddenly blazed with light as the hegemony fleet unleashed its fury. Energy weapons designed to shred battle cruisers poured destructive force toward the lone ship. For a heartbeat, the mysterious vessel was completely engulfed in the barrage. But when the light faded, it remained, untouched, unscathed, continuing its methodical advance. "Impossible," breathed Russo. "Direct hits confirmed but no damage registered. No shield flare, no energy absorption. It's as if the weapon's fire passed right through it." The hegemony fleet fired again, this time deploying missile salvos alongside energy weapons. The void between the ships became a maelstrom of destructive force, enough firepower to level a small moon. Again, the obsidian vessel emerged unscathed. "It's changing," Ortiz said, his voice barely audible above the hum of the bridge equipment. "Look at the hull patterns." The flowing geometric patterns across the ship's surface had accelerated, pulsing with an inner light that seemed to bend the very space around the vessel. A faint nimbus of energy, not quite light, not quite matter, began to form around it. "Hegemony vessels are attempting to retreat," Russo reported, disbelief evident in her voice. "They're breaking formation." But it was too late. The mysterious ship emitted a pulse, a silent wave of energy that expanded outward like ripples in a pond. As it touched each hegemony vessel, something extraordinary happened. The ships didn't explode or break apart, they simply faded, first becoming translucent, then transparent, then gone altogether. Within moments, 13 of the 14 hegemony vessels had vanished. Only the massive Eternal Dominion remained, and even it appeared partially transparent, as if fighting against the same effect that had claimed its escort fleet. "What just happened?" Alara demanded, her voice sharp with shock. "Where did they go?" Ortiz shook his head, his eyes wide. I don't know, Commander. They're just gone, no debris, no energy signatures, nothing. It's as if they never existed." The bridge of the Dauntless fell silent as the crew struggled to process what they'd witnessed. 13 warships, some of the most powerful vessels in known space, had been neutralized in seconds by a single, unknown craft. "Commander," Wei called, breaking the stunned silence, "we're being hailed by the unknown vessel." Alara straightened her uniform, steadying herself. On screen. The viewscreen shifted, revealing the bridge of the mysterious ship. It was unlike any command center Alara had seen, minimalist, with flowing surfaces that mirrored the geometric patterns of the hull. Soft, ambient light emanated from no discernible source. At the center stood a woman in a simple gray uniform devoid of insignia or rank markers. She appeared to be in her mid-30s, with close-cropped black hair and eyes that seemed to shift color like the patterns on her ship's hull. Her expression was composed, revealing neither triumph nor aggression. "Commander Novik of the United Systems vessel Dauntless," she said, her voice carrying a subtle resonance. "I am Captain Lyra Voss of the Revenant. You witnessed our intervention here today." Alara found her voice. "Where are the hegemony ships? What did you do to them?" A ghost of a smile crossed Voss's face. They have been displaced, relocated approximately 3 light-years from this position. Their crews are unharmed, though they may be somewhat disoriented. Displaced, Alara repeated incredulously. That's not possible. Not with conventional technology, no, Voss agreed. But the Revenant operates on different principles. What you witnessed was a phase displacement event, the first deployment of the technology in active combat conditions. The implications were staggering. If this technology could be replicated, it would fundamentally change the nature of warfare. Who are you? Alara asked, her mind racing. You wear no United Systems insignia, yet you intervened against a hegemony battle group. We serve humanity, Commander, but not exclusively any government or military organization, Voss answered. The Revenant project was developed independently, with contributions from scientists across human space. Before Alara could respond, Ortiz called out, Commander, the Eternal Dominion is powering up its primary weapon array. On screen, Captain Voss appeared unconcerned. It seems the Hegemony flagship wants a demonstration of its own. The massive dreadnought, still partially transparent, fired its main cannon, a devastating weapon capable of cracking planetary crusts. The energy beam lanced toward the Revenant and passed directly through it, continuing into empty space. As you can see, Voss continued calmly, conventional weapons cannot harm us. The Revenant exists partially in normal space and partially in what we call the slipstream, a dimensional overlay that allows us to phase in and out of conventional reality. The Revenant's hull patterns began pulsing again, more intensely this time. Another wave of energy emanated from the ship, engulfing the Eternal Dominion. The massive dreadnought faded from view, just as the others had before it. The war changes today, Commander Novik, Voss said. We have transmitted data packets to your vessel containing preliminary diplomatic protocols. The Hegemony cannot win a war against an enemy they cannot harm. They will have no choice but to negotiate. Alara felt a mix of hope and apprehension, and if they refuse, then we continue to demonstrate that their military superiority is an illusion, Voss replied. But we believe they are pragmatic enough to recognize the new reality. The captain's expression softened slightly. Your vessel has been selected as our initial liaison with United Systems Command. The Hyperion and Athena will arrive shortly. Please brief them on what you've witnessed. We will rendezvous with you again after you've had time to process the information we've provided. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge of the Dauntless in stunned silence. On the view screen, the Revenant's hull patterns flowed one final time before the vessel seemed to fade, becoming increasingly transparent until it vanished completely from both visual and sensor observation. Alara stared at the empty space where 14 warships had been just minutes before. Throughout human history, technological leaps had decisively shifted the balance of power, gunpowder, nuclear weapons, faster than light travel. Now, phase displacement technology promised to do the same. Orders, Commander, asked Ortiz, breaking the silence. Alara took a deep breath, centering herself. Compile all sensor data and recordings, decrypt and review the information packets from the Revenant, and prepare a full briefing for when the Hyperion and Athena arrive. She paused, looking at the stars on the view screen. Something tells me we just witnessed the beginning of the end of this war. I'm just not certain what comes after. As the Dauntless's crew set to work, Alara couldn't shake the feeling that humanity had just crossed a threshold from which there was no return. The mysterious Revenant had changed everything in a matter of minutes, not through destruction, but through the promise of invulnerability. The question that troubled her most wasn't about the technology itself, but about what humanity would become with such power at its disposal. Would it lead to peace, as Captain Voss suggested, or would it simply change the nature of conflict in ways they couldn't yet imagine? Only time would tell, and Alara suspected she would be witnessing the answer firsthand in the days to come. Echoes in the void. Supreme Marshal Dravker of the Zeven Hegemony stood rigidly before the High Council, his leathery skin pulled taut across angular features. The 7-member council sat elevated on their ceremonial platform, their expressions unreadable behind ornate masks that denoted their governing houses. The chamber, carved from a single massive piece of obsidian deep within the Hegemony's fortress capital, was designed to intimidate, and today it succeeded magnificently. Explain again, intoned Council Elder Mekvresh, his voice filtered through his mask's vocal apparatus, how 14 warships of our Third Fleet simply disappeared. Dravker suppressed the nervous twitch threatening to manifest in his secondary respiratory slits. After 40 cycles of military service, rising through the ranks by virtue of tactical brilliance and unwavering loyalty, his illustrious career now hung by a thread. "Honorable Council," he began, straightening his spine and adjusting the ceremonial cloak that marked his rank, "what we encountered defies conventional analysis. The vessel designated Revenant by the humans deployed technology that appears to manipulate spatial dimensions." He activated the holographic display embedded in the chamber floor. The recording pieced together from fragmented data transmitted by the Eternal Dominion before its displacement showed the sleek, black human vessel with its shifting geometric patterns. "Our weapons had no effect," Dravker continued. "Energy discharges and projectiles passed through the vessel as if it were a phantom. Then it emitted a pulse wave that caused our vessels to transition." "Transition where?" demanded Councillor Trasvan, leaning forward. 3.2 light-years from their original position, scattered across the Krell Nebula. Crews intact but disoriented. The Eternal Dominion's chronometers show a 12-hour discrepancy with standard time. The council chamber fell silent as the implications settled over the assembled leadership. For 3 decades, the hegemony had maintained technological superiority over the human systems. Their warriors were stronger, their ships more powerful, their tactical doctrines more refined. The only thing preventing total conquest was humanity's sheer stubbornness and vast territory. "How many of these vessels do the humans possess?" asked Councillor Nevreth, the only female on the High Council. Dravker hesitated. "Intelligence is inconclusive. We have confirmed reports of 2 such vessels operating in different sectors simultaneously. Unconfirmed reports suggest as many as 5. 5 vessels," Mekvresh said slowly, "that can neutralize entire battle groups without firing a shot." "Yes, honored elder." "And what," Nevrath continued, "do these humans demand in exchange for not using this technology to displace our homeworld into a star?" "They have transmitted diplomatic protocols," Dravker replied, "requesting formal peace negotiations. They claim to seek an end to hostilities, not dominance." Incredulous murmurs circulated among the councillors. The concept seemed alien to hegemony thinking. Power existed to be used, advantages to be pressed. "Supreme Marshal," Mekvresh said after the murmurs subsided, "you are tasked with developing a countermeasure to this technology. Meanwhile, we will entertain these diplomatic overtures if only to gain time. The hegemony does not surrender, not even to ghosts." Dravker placed his fist against his primary heart in salute. "By your command, honored elder." As he turned to leave, Councillor Nevrath's voice stopped him. "Marshal, would you say this technology changes the fundamental nature of warfare?" Dravker turned back slowly. "Yes, Councillor, for the first time in our history, warships are obsolete." Dr. Kaiden Reed stood at the observation window, watching technicians in environmental suits swarm over the partially constructed vessel in the cavernous assembly bay. Despite the bustle of activity, a profound silence enveloped him, the silence of disbelief, of witnessing the impossible made manifest. "Quite something, isn't it?" came a voice from behind him. Reed turned to see Director Naomi Fujita approaching, her silver-streaked black hair pulled back in a severe bun, her movements precise despite her 70 years. As head of the United Systems Advanced Research Division, she oversaw humanity's most classified scientific endeavors. "It's my thesis," Reed said quietly, turning back to the window. "Every detail, every theory I proposed, implemented with precision I didn't think possible for another decade at least." Fujita stood beside him, her reflection ghostly in the reinforced glass. "We've been following your work since your doctoral dissertation at New Cambridge. The mathematics was sound, but the engineering challenges seemed insurmountable until about 3 years ago." "When you had a breakthrough," Reed concluded. "When someone else did," Fujita corrected. "Someone outside our organization." Reed's eyebrows rose. "A private entity developed phase displacement technology." "Not exactly private, more independent." Fujita handed him a data tablet. "Project Spectre has existed for 15 years, founded by a coalition of scientists and officers who believed conventional approaches to the hegemony war were futile. They operated with unofficial sanction but outside direct government control." Reed skimmed the classified files with growing astonishment. The names listed included some of humanity's most brilliant minds, including several presumed dead or disappeared. And the Revenant, the vessel that confronted the hegemony fleet. Their prototype, launched 6 months ago after field tests in unpopulated systems. What happened at Arcturus was its first combat deployment. Fujita's expression grew somber. Your presence here means the program is entering its next phase. We need you to understand the technology better than its creators do. Why? Reed asked, sensing something unspoken. Fujita was quiet for a moment. Because we're not certain they told us everything about how it works or what the long-term consequences might be. Before Reed could respond, the facility's alert system activated, not an alarm, but a notification tone indicating an incoming priority transmission. The massive display on the far wall illuminated, showing a United Systems military insignia before transitioning to a live feed. Commander Alara Novik appeared on screen, her expression tense but controlled. Director Fujita, we've just received word from Proxima Outpost. A second hegemony fleet has been engaged by a vessel matching the Revenant's description. Same result, the entire battle group displaced. But there's something new, the Revenant is requesting permission to dock at your facility. Fujita straightened. For what purpose? They're asking specifically for Dr. Kaiden Reed, Novik replied, her eyes shifting to him. Captain Voss says it's time for the theoretical and practical applications of phase displacement technology to reunite. Reed felt a chill run through him. They know I'm here. They knew you'd be transferred here before I did, Fujita said, her voice tight with controlled frustration. Commander Novik, grant their request, full security protocols, but treat them as allies until proven otherwise. As the transmission ended, Reed turned back to the observation window. The ship under construction below, humanity's second phase displacement vessel, seemed suddenly more ominous than miraculous. What aren't you telling me, Director? He asked quietly. Fujita's reflection in the glass revealed a flicker of genuine concern. The mathematics of your theory predicted certain anomalies at the quantum level, minor reality fluctuations that should self-correct. And they're not self-correcting, Reed guessed. We don't know, Fujita admitted, but there have been incidents, temporal inconsistencies around the Revenant, sensor ghosts that persist longer than they should, crew members reporting déjà vu episodes lasting minutes rather than seconds. Reed felt his throat tighten. You're telling me the technology might be causing damage to spacetime itself. I'm telling you we don't have enough data to know, Fujita countered. And that's why you're here. That's why we need you to work with the Revenant's crew to understand what we're dealing with before we deploy more vessels with this technology. A technician approached, clearing his throat respectfully. Director, the Revenant has entered our security perimeter, docking estimated in 30 minutes. Fujita nodded dismissal, then turned to Reed. One more thing, Doctor, the chief designer of the Revenant's phase displacement drive was your sister. Reed felt as if the floor had dropped away beneath him. Vivian has been dead for 7 years. Her research vessel was destroyed in the Tau Ceti offensive. That's what we all believed, Fujita said gently. The truth is more complicated. The Revenant's docking procedure was unlike anything the facility had witnessed before. The vessel didn't so much dock as gradually phase into alignment with the station, its hull patterns flowing in complex sequences until it solidified completely within the massive bay. Even fully materialized, it retained an unsettling quality, as if it might slip away from reality at any moment. Reed stood with Director Fujita and a contingent of security personnel as the vessel's access hatch dilated open. He still felt numb from the revelation about his sister, his mind racing through possibilities, calculations, implications. Captain Lyra Voss emerged first, the same serene composure evident that Commander Novik had described from their encounter. She was followed by a tall man with copper-brown skin and a neatly trimmed beard, wearing the same simple gray uniform. Director Fujita, Voss said with a slight inclination of her head. Dr. Reed, thank you for receiving us. This is Nathaniel Okafor, our chief engineer. Okafor extended his hand to Reed, his expression warm. Your work on dimensional boundary mathematics made all this possible, Doctor. It's an honor. Reed accepted the handshake automatically, still scanning the airlock behind them. I was told my sister is waiting for you aboard, Voss confirmed. She thought a more private reunion would be appropriate. Fujita stepped forward. Before any reunions, I need answers, Captain. You've deployed twice now against hegemony forces, effective, yes, but unauthorized by United Systems Command. Your vessel operates outside our chain of command, yet you claim to serve humanity. Who exactly are you answerable to? A fair question, Voss acknowledged. Project Spectre began as a collaboration between scientists and military personnel who recognized conventional approaches would never end this war. We received clandestine funding from multiple sources: corporations with interest in the contested territories, wealthy individuals who lost loved ones to hegemony attacks, even certain elements within the United Systems government who couldn't publicly support us. Vigilantes with a starship, Fujita said, her tone neutral. Patriots with a solution, Voss countered smoothly. But we understand your concerns. That's why we're here, to integrate our efforts with yours now that the technology has proven viable. And the anomalies, Reed asked. The temporal inconsistencies, the reality fluctuations, were these part of your calculations? A shadow passed over Voss's features. I see Director Fujita has briefed you. Yes, we've observed certain side effects. They were predictable from the theoretical model but manifest somewhat differently in practical application. Are they dangerous? Reed pressed. That's part of what we hope to determine with your help, Akafor interjected. The effects appear to be localized and temporary, but we need more data, more analysis. Which brings us to why we're really here, Voss said. Dr. Reed, we want you to join us aboard the Revenant for its next deployment. Your sister has refined the dimensional mathematics, but she believes you may be able to resolve the anomalies she can't account for. Reed felt a strange mixture of professional excitement and personal dread. The opportunity to study the technology in action was irresistible to the scientist in him. But the brother in him feared what he might discover about Vivian's presumed death and subsequent secret life. The hegemony won't remain passive for long, Voss continued. They're already developing countermeasures based on data collected during our encounters. We need to press our advantage while we have it, force them to the negotiating table before they find a way to neutralize phase technology. Fujita's expression hardened. And if the side effects you mentioned turn out to be more dangerous than you've acknowledged, what then, Captain? Then we power down and find another way, Voss said simply. We developed this technology to end the war, Director, not to destroy reality in the process. Before Fujita could respond, Commander Novik's voice came over the communication system. Director, we have an urgent situation. Hegemony vessels have been detected approaching 6 different human colonies simultaneously. They're moving fast, estimate weapons range in under 2 hours. A test, Akafor said grimly. They're trying to determine how many phase vessels we have and how quickly we can respond. Voss turned to Reed, her shifting eyes suddenly intensely focused. We need to decide now, Doctor, are you coming with us? Reed looked to Fujita, who gave him a nearly imperceptible nod. I'll gather my equipment, he said. The interior of the Revenant was as distinctive as its exterior, flowing surfaces that seemed to blend seamlessly into one another, ambient lighting that adjusted to optimize crew efficiency, and throughout, the subtle geometric patterns that characterized its hull. As Reed followed Captain Voss through the corridors, he noticed other peculiarities. Subtle vibrations in the air, almost below the threshold of perception. Occasional distortions in his peripheral vision that vanished when he tried to focus on them. The sense that certain sections of the ship were somehow more present than others. The effects are stronger inside the vessel, Voss acknowledged, nodding his observation. Your body is experiencing quantum uncertainty on a macro scale. Most crew members acclimate within 48 hours. They arrived at what appeared to be the ship's nerve center, a circular chamber where a dozen crew members worked at stations arranged around a central holographic display. The display showed real-time data on the approaching hegemony vessels, tracking their trajectories toward human colonies. We can only intercept 3 of the 6 attack groups, Voss said, studying the display. The Phantom is moving to engage the other 3. The Phantom, Reed asked. Our sister ship, Voss explained. Launched 2 weeks after the Revenant, the phase technology is slightly different, an alternative approach your sister developed. As if summoned by the mention, a woman entered from a side passage. Older than Reed remembered, with new lines around her eyes and streaks of premature gray in her dark hair, but unmistakably Vivian Reed. Hello, Kaiden, she said, her voice bringing back a flood of memories. I'm sorry for the deception, it was necessary. Reed stared at his sister, emotions warring within him. 7 years of grief, of missed family gatherings where her name was spoken in hushed tones, of wondering if he could have saved her somehow, all crashing against the reality of her standing before him. Necessary, he repeated, the word tasting bitter. Was it necessary to let your family think you were dead, to let me think I'd lost you? Vivian's expression softened with regret. The work we were doing had to remain completely hidden from the hegemony. They have infiltrators everywhere. The fewer people who knew I was alive, the safer the project remained. She stepped closer. I wanted to tell you, Kaiden, especially when we started implementing your theoretical framework, but by then the deception had gone on for years. Before Reed could respond, an alarm tone sounded, subtle but unmistakable. Captain called one of the crew, hegemony vessels accelerating. They'll reach New Ankara in 53 minutes. Voss moved to the central console. Prepare for phase transition, plot intercept course. She turned to the Reed siblings. I need you both at your stations. Family reunions will have to wait. Vivian led her brother to an adjacent laboratory space, where multiple displays showed real-time data on the ship's phase displacement drive. You'll observe from here during this deployment, she explained. Watch for anomaly patterns in the quantum field. I've programmed the system to flag anything that matches the theoretical instabilities you predicted in your papers. Reed scanned the equipment, nodding modifications to standard quantum sensors. You've been monitoring the spacetime fabric around the ship. As best we can, Vivian confirmed. The readings get strange during full-phase transition. The ship's ambient lighting shifted subtly, and Reed felt a momentary disorientation, as if he were suddenly less substantial, less anchored to physical reality. Phase transition beginning, came Voss's voice over the communication system. Stand by for acceleration. What followed defied Reed's understanding of physics. The Revenant didn't accelerate in any conventional sense. There was no feeling of momentum, no inertial forces. Instead, the ship seemed to slip. Reality outside the viewport stretched and compressed, stars smearing into lines before resolving again into a completely different configuration. We've translated to the New Ankara system, Vivian announced, checking her instruments. Total transit time 6.4 seconds, spatial displacement 14.2 light-years. Reed stared at the displays in disbelief. That's impossible. Even with the phase technology, you can't exceed light speed limitations by that margin. We don't exceed them, Vivian corrected. We circumvent them. The ship partially transitions to the slipstream dimension where spacetime follows different rules. Then we transition back to normal space at our destination. Reed was about to question further when the tactical display activated, showing 3 hegemony warships approaching the colony world. Engaging phase displacement array, Voss announced. Target lock established. The geometric patterns throughout the ship began flowing more rapidly, and Reed felt that strange sense of unreality intensify. On the external cameras, he could see the Revenant's hull becoming translucent, ethereal. Full phase achieved, reported Akafer from the bridge. Weapons efficacy reduced to 0%. As at Arcturus, the hegemony vessels opened fire as soon as the Revenant came within range. Energy weapons and projectiles passed harmlessly through the partially phased ship, continuing into empty space beyond. Initiating displacement pulse, Voss ordered. The ship shuddered slightly, the first physical sensation Reed had felt since the phase transition began. A wave of energy, visible only as a subtle distortion in space, emanated from the Revenant in all directions. When it reached the hegemony vessels, they began to fade from view, becoming increasingly transparent until they vanished completely. Displacement successful, Akafer confirmed. Hegemony vessels relocated to designated coordinates in the Hourglass Nebula. Reed watched in fascination, but his attention was drawn to one of the sensor displays where an alert had begun flashing. Vivian, he said sharply, look at this anomaly pattern. His sister moved quickly to his side, studying the readout. Her expression grew troubled. That shouldn't be happening. The quantum field should stabilize immediately after the displacement pulse. Reed examined the data more closely. The displacement isn't just affecting the hegemony ships. It's creating microfractures in the underlying spacetime fabric. How serious? Vivian asked, her voice tight. I don't know yet, Reed admitted. But if these microfractures accumulate with each use of the technology, we could be causing permanent damage to reality itself, Vivian finished, the implication hanging heavily between them. On the main communication channel, Voss's voice betrayed none of their concern. New Ankara secure, plotting course to intercept the next hegemony attack group, phase transition in 3 minutes. As the Revenant prepared for its next jump, Reed and Vivian exchanged a look of shared understanding. The technology that promised to end the war might carry a price higher than anyone had anticipated. We need more data, Reed said finally, and we need to develop a theoretical model for how these fractures might propagate over time. Vivian nodded, her scientific mind already racing ahead to potential solutions. And we need to do it quickly, because if these readings are accurate every time we use the phase displacement drive, we're tearing little holes in the universe. Phase transition commencing, announced Voss. As the Revenant slipped once more between dimensions, Reed wondered if humanity had finally developed a weapon too dangerous to use, not because of its destructive power, but because of what it might do to the very fabric of existence itself.